program, dear Jaap, and thank you for responding to this invitation. I would like to start this conversation with you speaking about the context, the chronospace cultural context in which you were conceived.
Well, I was born immediately after World War II, and I was the fifth child in a family of four, and I was the last child. My mother told me afterwards that I was not planned. They didn't expect me anymore. The distance between me and the brother before me is about 6 years. He was born during the war, and I was the child after the war. I was the youngest one, the last one. We always say that in Holland, I was an afterthought, I was coming behind. And I was, of course, from my mother and my parents, I was also a symbol of hope. It was the time that Holland was restoring and healing from the war. There was hope, there was a lot of work to do. So I am in that mood. And my parents also came out of the Second World War more liberal. I was raised as a Christian child, and my father was in the beginning very dogmatic, but after the war he changed more or less his mind and became more liberal. And for my parents, I was special because they were very happy with me. My birth was for my mother very heavy. She was already, some years older. And also the breastfeeding period was very difficult. There are stories in the family that it was a strong winter. It was very, very deep temperatures. And that even in the month of March, my father had to cut ice blocks out of the canals to cool the breast of my mother. So, but on the other hand, they were, so to say, I have a kind of karmic relationship with a little sister that was born just before the beginning of the war. She was born in 1939. It was just a few weeks after that Hitler started to attack Poland. So it were very dark times. And that little sister was born on the 25th of September in 1939, but she died 4 months ago, just a few weeks before Hitler would attack Holland. So she's a kind of a mirror, but she died, and I never knew about her. My parents, my father in particular, never talked about her until I married with my current wife on the 25th of September 1986. I married on the day that this girl was born, and then my father started to talk about it. He never knew. I didn't know about her. But still my father was refusing to talk so much about that girl because he was not there when she was born. He was as a soldier. He was not there when she died. He was, waiting as a soldier for the Germans. Only on his last day, on his deathbed, it was the first time he said to me, "Son, there's no day that I do not think about your little sister. And I'm mad on God. My father has been all these years of his life, he was angry on God, that God punished him by the death of this child." And my mother told me, now not directly, but my sister and my brothers told me that my mother felt very guilty about the death of that girl because she didn't want to have the child. It were bad times, it were dark times. And so she interpreted the death of that girl after 5 months as also a kind of punishment by God, because she did not love that, because she didn't want the child, God punished her for that. That was the conviction of my mother. So you can imagine how happy she was with me. And it still moves me that apparently I have a kind of, yeah, relationship with that little sister I didn't know so much about for many years, and about whom my father trusted me on the last hours of his life, about how big the problem was for him that this girl died. So I have a kind of a relationship with that. But I'm in the family the youngest one and the promising one, and the times were good. I had a very good youth. When I think on the first 20 years of my life, there's only light. There's only light. There's nature. There is playing. There's love. It was, I have, yeah, I have a good youth, but mainly dominating in my memory is the nature, the meadows, the cows, the playing in the water, um, and being alone. I was a weak boy. I was bullied, I was not very strong. I was bullied at school. I was very often alone. I played with girls more than with boys because the boys always, bullied me. But despite of that, my memory on my youth is very full of light and full of love. And maybe it has to do with that I was born on that lucky moment after the war. But I think that has been very important for me for my later career and my later philosophy, that I was so happy to live in my early days as an innocent, naive, um, nature open child.
What was the name of your father and your mother?
My father, I'm named after my father. My father was Jaap. Jaap is the famous man in the Bible that fought with God. So I'm very proud on that name because I consider myself also as a person that his whole life is struggling with God, with spirit, and Jacob was the man who did that in the Bible. My mother was lean. That's very difficult to translate in English. Nechtelina. No, and they lived together. It was a very good marriage. There were always financial problems. I remember big struggles about finances, but they were good, and they were married for 60 years. Just 1 year ago, I had my 55th marriage celebration, and so I was they were a stable couple, giving much stability for their children.
Great. So going to Jacob, the father, Jacob, what were the best qualities of this man, of the father?
Yeah. My elder brothers and sister remember my father as very dogmatic, very disciplinary, because he was so strong believer in Christ and God, and everything should be according to the rules. We had to go to the church on Sunday 2 times. We were not allowed to swim on Sunday. But in my youth, he became more softer in that. And I remember my father mainly as a very um, uh, he loved me. Certainly, he loved me. I was very well accepted by him. He let me go to school, the gymnasium, which is a grammar school that was for his level of social level. He had to pay a lot of money for that because he wanted me to become a vicar. He loved me to be a priest, a pastor. So he loved me. He inspired me, and he was for me a symbol of a very um, he was very important in the community, in the politics, but also he was working. He was very important for um, how do you call it? Raising schools in the community, the village that I lived in, and he was very popular. He was very well known, and he was always the man of the compromise. He was always trying to get the parties in the church together. He just like me. he was the man of the middle, and when you are a man of the middle, you always have enemies on both sides, the parties that you want to, and that was the tragedy of my father. He was always the one who tried to bring people together, but also the one who was always blamed by the parties. But that's what I admire so much in him, that he worked so hard for the community, and in the meantime had a full job to earn money to raise his family. But at the same time, well, that inspired me, that my father was a famous man, well known, and that he opened schools, and that well, he was a good example for me. I appreciate he was well committed with community, committed with people. Yeah, so he was a good example for me. I think that
And
my genes, I have the genes of a teacher. My brother has become a teacher. My sister, my other brother has become a priest, a pastor. And it comes from my father. He was very well in debating and reading, explaining the Bible, and talking for meetings in the community. So I think I have it from him. Yeah.
great. What was the name of the community where you were born and
Oh,
raised?
a very little village, Marsden, Marssen, a little village town near Utrecht. And Utrecht is a bigger city in the center of Holland. So I lived in the polder. The polder was water, meadow, nature. Yeah, that's my domain where I come from. Not a big town, but a small village. Yes.
Right. And let's go to your mother. And what would you say were the best qualities of your mom?
She was always there for me,
Yeah.
but she was also um, in her own with her brothers, my uncles. There was a big yeah, family controversy, because the brothers took over the factory and the shop of her father, and she was more or less neglected by the boys, and that was always yeah, something she was angry about. But for her children and for my father, she was she was taking care of home, household, and she was yeah, very she was also religious and believed in God, but she was more light, she was more the one to talk about Christ, the life of Christ and the behavior of Christ. My father was heavy, dark in his religious conviction. My mother was bright and light, and she was always there. Yes, she was always home, waiting for you, taking care of you. When I came home, I always remember coming home in tears because my love affair with a girlfriend on the school was broken, and she was there in the middle of the night. So she was a good mother. Yeah.
Right. So we see that both have a commitment to God or to spirit
Yeah.
in their own ways,
In their own way.
which make a good combination, a little bit more dogmatic
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
dark or heavy,
Yeah.
but also then light from the part of the mother,
Yeah.
presence, commitment, and service to the community.
Yeah. 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 That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Great.
And my mother was the one. My father was the guy of the theology, very abstract conversations and talk about the hierarchy in the church and God. But my mother was the one of the simple wisdoms. Better is the enemy of God. That was what my mother said. Better is the enemy of God. That were the things that my mother, she was simple, but so, yeah, clear. Yeah.
Great. Right. So, how have these qualities been integrated in you and your soul purpose, or what you saw yourself do in your life?
When I was 21, I broke with everything that had to do with my father. I didn't want to go to the church, and I wanted to be no member of the church. I didn't want to believe in God anymore. That all was done. So in a way, I broke with my father, with his religion, with his church. Not literally, but there was no fight. But I just in my personality. But later on, by my own children, I was again confronted with the Bible, telling the stories. So I found my way back to Christianity, to Christ, in my own way, more the way of my mother. You know, when my wife thinks on Christ, she sees the man on the cross. When I think on Christ, I see the 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 lawful man walking through the hills of Galilee, talking with his friends, healing people. Yeah, that was the image that inspired me. And I think still that's my that's my belief. That's the belief in Christ. Christ as God and man, you know. Neither God nor man, or as well God as man. You know, that's the main impulse, inspiration I got from my parents. But first I had to leave it. I first had to completely deny it and find it again on my own way. But I found my Christian belief back more in the way of my mother than the way of my father. But that's, yeah.
Right. Great. Great. And you said that there are more children in the family where you were born and raised. What were the names of these siblings?
They all are alive still, except with the exception of that little sister. Her name was Nelleke. Nelleke. My eldest brother is now 88. He's the oldest one, and he's Dick. He's called Dick, D-I-C-K. And he was the salesman. You know, he's the rich man. He's the guy. Then comes my sister. I have only one sister left. She is 85 or something. She's also old. And then comes my brother. She's called after my mother, Lieneke or Lien. And my brother, the most close one, is coming after that. That is Hans or Johann Hans. And he is the vicar. He's the pastor. And in particular, the last 10 years, we come also closer together because he now learns more about my philosophy. There has been published a month ago a podcast with me on YouTube of 2 hours. I'm interviewed by a person, and that is already watched by 60,000 people. And I also sent it to my brothers and my sister and the brother near me, you know, the pastor. He's completely surprised and that now I understand you. Now I understand what connects us, and so we have a strong bond in spirit, in mind. Yeah. So that are and they are all three are alive, for which I'm very grateful. And I'm still the youngest one, but gradually I came up, you know, In the beginning, I was the youngest one. You the youngest one. But now they start to recognize, oh my God, there's more in Jaap than we ever thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a nice feeling. Yeah, that's a process that goes on the last 10 years. So Jaap has more to tell. So yeah, and they admire me as a scientist, but now they start to understand, well, that behind that outside professor and scientist, there's something deep that they can recognize in themselves. They recognize my father. They all say that it's you are a father. I'm so alike on my father, it seems, and I'm proud of that.
Are there any stories of your childhood that you would like to share?
Yeah, I told you about light. I told you about nature. I was a scout, and but important in my youth is two things. I think it sounds very romantic, but I think that during my middle school, from your 6 till your 18, from your 12 to your 18, that's the middle school. I had a sweetheart love for 5 years. So true, so innocent, so not non-sexual, so very simple, so naive, but so true, so solid. 5 years. And as soon as we started to study and become students, within 2 months, it was broke, and I've never seen her again. And I still convinced that this love affair, or how do you call that, this sweetheart, has been so important for me because again, I was convinced, and that's the main, let's say, product of my youth. I started to believe in the good. I trusted man. I think that's the main impulse I got from my youth, that humans are good, and that the world is good, and that there is love. And this very simple love affair with her, yeah, yeah. That's the way. Why? That's how I met my wife, because already in the first year of my study, when I broke this love affair with a girl from my middle school, I met my wife, and she was the complete opposite. She had a very dark youth with fight and struggle with the fathers and the parents and the brothers and the sisters. She didn't believe in love. She was, a woman of the world with having affairs with men, and she actually was the complete opposite of me, the complete opposite, and it fitted. And then we became pregnant. It was my first pregnancy. It was not planned, and everybody said, "Well, that's ridiculous. That a medical student who gets pregnant, could he prevent it?" And my father said, "You have to marry her," and so we married. And still, we are still married after a long life of ups and downs and struggles and diseases. So what happened? I don't know. I think that I was the innocent guy that she needed, and she was for me the experienced, world-oriented woman I needed, and we completely fit it.
Yeah, like father and mother,
Yeah,
dark and light.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was this
And
son, our eldest son, which is now 55. He was the one that brought us together, and we were convinced that okay, we should have one child. And for 7 years, he was the only child we had, because we were so convinced that one is enough. The world is not. The world is dark, and the future. So it's enough to have one child. So he's actually. It's completely different from the three girls that came after that. After that, there came a cluster of three daughters, and but the son is separate. It is a karmic relationship. He is the one that brought us together, and we were from both sides. We were prepared, so to say, to complete each other. And I think that my youth full of light and love and goodness, and I don't have many traumatic experiences in my youth. Only one, and that was a near-death experience. I told you I was bullied often by my fellow boys in the class. And once upon a time in the winter, they shouted me to cross the pond. The pond was frozen. And they shouted from the other side of the pond, "Come, Jaap, come, Jaap." And then I stepped on the ice, but the ice was broken. You couldn't see it because it was ice with green plants frozen. So I went under. And there was an enormous panic. And how I get out of it, I don't know. But it was so dark and panicful experience that I lost my mind, but I came out. And when I came out on the other side of the pond, they were all laughing. It was so humiliating. It was so, and I still remember that this is very bad. I thought I faced the devil or something. I faced a darkness that people laughing at you when you're nearly dying. So that's a very impressive experience that for me meant beware of the evil, beware of the evil in man. But never again it became so dominant. So the other atmosphere I lived in love and goodness of man was okay. But this was a very deep experience of the badness of the bad, in people.
Right. Were there any grandparents?
Yes, I have. Oh my God, I have a good grandfather from my mother's side, but he was a classical grandfather, a little bit distant. But my grandmother from my father's side, yes, I remember her also again, love. She was always there. I was there when she died on her bed in 1965. And she was the one giving you sweeties. She was the one telling stories, fairy tales. Yeah, it was very, it's hardly to tell what made her so important for you. But yeah, it was, and even her dying, her deathbed, was very important for me because it was peaceful. And my father was there, and he was not in panic. He was not sad. He was just loveful to his mother that was dying. And I was there as a child. I was admit my father took me with him and to show her when she was dead. So for me, that's an icon of peace.
Great.
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I've had a good youth. Yes. There's rooted my belief in man. There's rooted my belief in the goodness of this earth, and also I think there I have my roots of my conviction that there is something going on in this world that has to do with not with power but with love, with meaning, whatever. I think it comes from there. Yeah.
So actually the initial traits that you started your life with are have got some kind of differences or opposite dimensions, very present and loving and sweet and innocent and simple on the one hand, mainly because of the women, mother, grandmother,
Yeah.
and
And
more
that little
heart.
yeah. And there's this little sister, that karmic relationship with her.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've thought maybe I am her reincarnation, or at least we have some soulmate contact with her. That's a doubt, or that's an idea.
Who knows? Yeah, and the men in the family come to be a little bit heavier, a little bit more absent, or a little bit more um,
Distant.
isolated,
Yeah.
or distant, perhaps is the word.
Yeah, and there were always older men around me. You know, my brothers were older than me, and yeah, it were more distant. You know, the men in my life were more distant, but of course I loved them. I appreciated them in their way they are, but they were distant. They were my mother and my grandmother. You know,
Yeah. So how have these traits guided you in the direction that your life took later in your life after, in your adulthood?
I think my main theme, my mission of my biography has become to bring people back or make people aware of the primary reality, that the reality we live in, the reality that we experience with our senses, with our mind, that is the primary reality. And that we have to take care and prevent that reality will be taken over by the scientific reality, which nowadays people adore. You know, the genes, the brains, the astronomy, the stars, the galaxies. Everybody is involved in that reality, and that is for me. Um, that's why I'm so dedicated in phenomenology, because phenomenology is the scientific approach that also takes for true what your senses are telling you. Goethe said, "It are not your sense organs that betray you; it are your ideas, you know, that betray you, that errors you." So I think that's the main theme, to that this world, this reality we live in. I'm a kind of naivist. You're naive, like the medieval scientist was a naive scientist because they did science, but they took the world as it was presented to them. And that's a kind of what do you call it, paradox in my life, that the most important scientist I adore and I met in my life was Vesalius, was the anatomy, the human body. You know, already in my medical studio, I was so fascinated by the body anatomy, the complexity, by that hero, 1543, the first one who took a knife and started to approach the human body as an object, as a scientific object. And nowadays, I realize that my whole life is involved in showing people that this man gave us a new consciousness, that with him started a new, enlightened mind of observership and onlookership and science. But on the other hand, I am the one that um, dedicated my scientific life to overcoming the anatomy, to overcome this secondary scientific approach and to bring it, so to say, back to the prime reality, the naive reality where we live in. So that actually, they always say that the subjective world that we experience and that we live in with our senses, that is subjective. And science is objective. And nowadays we believe in the fairy tale that objective is right and subjective is wrong. And I'm completely convinced of the opposite. You know, it's a primary reality. That is reality. And the reality of science, that's an illusion. That's an illusion that we think. And of course we have to accept it and we can work with it. And it helped us a lot. And it gave us so much of technique and medicine. But if we only go that path, then we will lose the reality of the planet, not of the planet, of the earth that we live in. So that I think that my youth, my naiveness of the child, now I try to bring back as the naive realism or spiritualism that takes the reality as it comes to us in our senses as true and not as a subjective illusion. I think there's a kind of relationship. It's difficult to bring it in words, but that's what I feel.
As you develop and you go from one stage of your evolutionary process to the next and the next, who were or what were apart from nature, uh, who were the inspirators?
The first years in Utrecht at the university, I was the anatomist. And the professor, Professor Van Dorenmalen, he was a young guy. He was just nominated as a professor, and he wanted to gather young cooperators. And he chooses me, and he gave me every room. I was 23 years old. I was still not yet a medical doctor yet. And he allowed me to give lectures, to be leading prosector in anatomy. He had so, and I did it. I did it. I did it as I gave 10 lectures per year about embryology. It were circuses. It were performances. Hundreds of students came. They had to bring in cameras to show the lectures also in other rooms in the building. And for 5 years I did that, 10 lectures in embryology, but I also did the dissection courses, and I introduced the students, and he gave me so much freedom, and I was growing very rapidly, and that was the fascination for anatomy and for morphology and the embryology. And then there comes the second period, that was in Maastricht. I got again on the anatomy and embryology department, and there was a professor, and with him I started to do research, and there I developed my view on the anatomy of the locomotor system, not of muscles, bones, and joints, but an architectural model that we have to overcome our anatomy. The muscle man, as we sometimes, have it in our minds, a man with muscles is an artifact. The body is not organized in muscles. The body is organized in motions, in movements. It's quite another anatomy. So there, and he taught me how to be scientist. He knew that I was inspired by anthroposophy, and we talked sometimes about it. He knew that I had this phenomenological mind, that he trained me, that he was the only one who recognized me in my capacity to jump from the scientific approach to the phenomenological approach. Actually, he made me a good phenomenologist, a good spiritual thinker, because he so strictly trained me in what is real science. And in particular, he was aware of the restrictions of science, of the limits, that there are things, that there are realities that science cannot say a word about. And that made me a good, strong scientist, able to defend against my colleagues, all these notions of well, it's your brain, it are your genes, because I was so well trained by this man about what is science and what is science not. The bad colleagues, I always say, they say that heaven does not exist. But that's bad science. You cannot say as a scientist that heaven does not exist. You must say as a scientist, I don't have the methods, I don't have the methodology to prove something like mind or spirit or hereafter, so I don't say anything about it. That's the good attitude, and that's what I learned from him, to be a good scientist and know my restrictions and know exactly where I would go over the limits of science and come in the approach of phenomenology and the prime reality. So that was the era of science and publications, and then came, let's say, a third period, and that was when I became connected with fascia, and then I realized now come together my embryology track. I was already giving lectures and courses in embryology for many decades. And on the other hand, my scientific approach about connective tissue, fascia, architecture, it comes together because I was very accepted and very recognized in the circles of fascia. And I I promoted a phenomenological approach of the human body, like statements like the brain doesn't know about muscles. The brain doesn't live in muscles. The brain lives in motions, and motions is more than the sum of reflexes. Motions is more, than just moving your muscles. Motions is what you do with your whole body. And so I connected gradually embryology, my holistic embryology, with that approach of, let's say, holistic anatomy, which it's a contradiction. And that was also a very rich period for me, that I now at the end could combine these two flows in my life. On the one hand, embryology, teaching people holistic and spiritual embryology outside my job, and on the other side, my job, the anatomy, in which I started to overcome the paradigms of Vesalius and the paradigms of the pure anatomical mind, the atomization of the world, thinking in particles. It's not about the particles, it's about the whole, and that came together. And so now at the end, now I'm going to have the feeling, well, this is what happened. Yeah. Why I came to the discipline of anatomy and embryology, well, that has also has a story, but I'm now in the state that I can fuse these two disciplinaries and bring them together in a phenomenological biology of the human being. And in that phenomenological biology, there is spirit, there is mind, there is love, which is completely absent in anatomy, science, and so on. Oh, my
Great.
biography is really a piece of art. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, something like that. And it's not my credit. There was a question of you in the, what would you like to have been different? Are there things of which you say nowadays that maybe I should have done that in a different way? There's nothing that I can imagine. And it's not because I made this root of my soul through science. No, I met at the right time persons who gave me an inspiration, persons who gave me space, persons, I have been so lucky by meeting at the right moment, the right people. And yeah, so it's not, I wouldn't say I would do anything else. Everything in my biography has the meaning of, me bringing me to science, but also connecting science with the primary reality.
Great.
So I'm
Give me
a happy and satisfied man.
Yeah. That is the most important of all, to feel this fulfillment
Yeah,
of the life lived so
yeah,
far.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I realized that I cannot look back and say to myself, well, were the things that you made wrong, or were the things that you would have done different? No, it's okay. It's I could not imagine to make a composition that it was created. I was lucky to be able to do that. Yeah.
A piece of art, as you said, a piece of art.
Yeah. Yes. In a way.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
But not the
Now,
credits. Yeah, not the credits. Not me. Not. It's
yeah,
not my credit. I was
yeah,
lucky,
yeah.
and that's my conviction.
Or,
That's what I always say to students: if you don't know what to do, wait. Wait and open your ears and your, because it will come to you what you need. But often you pass by, you forget it, you don't listen. So it's I was lucky to be there at the right time when a person crossed my path or this professor opened the doors. And,
which brings us to the next question, Jaap. The important learnings, lessons that you have gained or shared so far, and you just mentioned one. Be there, listen, observe, wait, and it will show, as you mentioned it earlier. So could you continue with this learnings uh, from your first part stage, the one that gave you the opportunity to uh, teach embryology because of the trust of that professor that early in your academic life, and then the other phase, and then the synthesis of all the synthesis of all the parts of your life. What are the learnings, the lessons?
What are the lessons?
Yes.
Well, a very important lesson is that I learned that the most threatening risk we nowadays are going is the atomization of the world, thinking in parts, in individuals, the individualization of our society, thinking that organisms are built up from cells, are built up from genes, think our reality is falling apart in particles, in details, and we go into deep horizons. We still have 2 centuries to go to understand the universe. We have still 2 centuries to go to understand our genome. We are lost in details. And what I learned is actually that by going into this data world, this atomized data and details, we lost the sense of whole, of holism. It's like the poet Eliot said it, where's the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? And now, where's the knowledge we have lost in information? And how lost will we be when there's only information? And that's what I see nowadays. That in many respects, the whole is falling apart in particles. And my main lesson is that we have to bring that back. And my main lesson is this world is about 2. This world, this reality, this whole universe, this whole life, this whole biology is about 2. There's mind and body, there's spirit and matter. It's about a deep twofoldness, a deep polarity. That is my main lesson. And that we threaten to reduce the reality to a kind of monoculture of matter, particles. Everywhere that's the case. And what is failing is holism. That what brings it together, what keeps it together. Everywhere it's disappearing. In politics, in societies, in biology, in mathematics, everywhere we got lost in information, got lost in the data. And that is my lesson, my biography is in the context of, I'm a generalist. That's my blessing, that I remained. I still remember that it was so at the end of my medical study, I still was able to choose a specialism. And I love neurology, I love pediatrics, and I love psychiatry. But then I realized going into a specialism brings me away from, the overall. And it's like a dead end. Specializing is like a dead end. You will end up as a perfect doctor in psychiatry, and so that's why I remained anatomist and stayed embryologist, because I love to be involved in the whole, in the general. And that's what I have to tell people. Don't forget the overall, the whole. We are threatening to get lost in the details of the matter. There is something else that keeps it all together, and call that mind or spirit or God or whatever. I think that, that's my main lesson. There is no matter alone. There's also that other dimension, spirit, and that we have to go for there. There's a way. Okay. That is my more important message. That the primary reality is the reality that we should live, and that we should stop confusing the conditions for matter with the matter itself. We always confuse the brain, which is a very important condition for consciousness, we confuse brain with consciousness. We confuse heredity with genes. Genes are an important condition for heredity, but there's more. The whole body is not a cause, the whole body is a necessary condition, but it's not enough. There is something else to complete it. And that is what my main lesson here, that we don't have, as a slogan I say, this universe, they want to go to Mars. There are bloody people like Elon Musk, they want to go to Mars and save the mankind by a plan B. There is no plan B. This universe is not waiting for our bodies. This universe, if it is waiting, it's waiting for our consciousness, for our mind, for our spirit. I think that the whole universe is about consciousness. I think that the whole universe is about awareness, and that some other philosophers also are convinced of that, and that this universe is waiting for our mind, for our spirit. What are we going to bring forth out of evolution and bring to the universe as a spiritual content? I think that's and then you come to slogans like, it's not about ruling the world, it's about loving the world. It's about love. Reconnect. And we lost the connection. Religion, that's the key word. Not the religions, the classical religion, but a new way to relegate, to reconnect with the mind and the spirit, where this universe is about. Something like that. You can hear the genes of the figure, the genes of the pastor. Very often people say afterwards, of course, well, your father can be content. You have become a good vicar, Jaap, you've become a good pastor. Okay, maybe it's that, but that's my deep search for truth, for spirit, for wholeness, for unity.
Unity, reconnection, bringing the whole. Excellent. So if you could send a message to the younger generation now, starting their life, what would your message be?
Last years, I have more and more young people in my courses. That's right. And on the one hand, there's a problem, because the old icons, mythologies, images, that I learned from the Greek, from the Bible, for many young people, they are lost. They don't know about where we come from and where this culture, what guys like Vesalius, what they meant for our mind, for the mind of our culture. So, I have always a very simple advice, and that is read at least books. And for every book that you read that was published after the year that you are born, read a book of a person that was a book that was written before you were born. Please be interested in how it was, how we thought some centuries or 1 century ago. Then you might find, oh, there it comes from. And then you might find the way where we have to go to. I think that's very important. And of course, I have my message. That it's not about that maybe the worst thing we created is what I call atomization, falling apart in individuals, particles. So my main message to them is create communities with a team. Can be a cultural team or a scientific team. Restore the disastrous individualization and the egoism that is now ruling our societies. Nationality is even more worse than racism or sexism. You know, the nationalism try to overcome the frontiers and the barriers that we created in our societies by means of power or skills or whatever. Yeah, it's vague. I know it's vague, and maybe my greatest advice is, go back to the roots of science, the roots of your body. Be embryo.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm worried because they grow up in a completely disastrous and atomizing world. So it's very difficult. I see it in my own children, how difficult it is to find your truth, to find your own reality and truth. Nowadays, it's very difficult for them. And again, I emphasize, do not only read contemporary science, read, science and books from people of 50 years ago or something.
Which means, Jaap, that this young generation now starting, what kind of answers or solutions will be asked to provide in the next 50 years, 60 years from now?
Yeah. I don't know. The only hope I have is that it will break down, that the current materialism and egoism, and that it will break down, and that there might come, like I told you, oases, groups, communities that will, try to recreate, wholeness and togetherness, and that should be organized through the classical limits, boundaries, and categories we have now. So, internationalism is important. I'm not so good in that. No, I don't know. But I often get from them, that they are very. I sometimes get emails from people who tell me, I didn't live before I was in your course. I opened their eyes, and when I asked, then they said, it was not what you told us, it was how you told it. And then they asked, well, what is it then? And then they said, well, you believe in something. And so often our teachers tell us things and you don't feel their commitment in it. So my answer to them is, well, that's true. I'm so committed with the embryo. I'm so involved with the anatomy. I love it. You must try to find a profession where you love to be it, and not only do it for the money or for survival. I think that getting involved with things and with your fellow men and fellow women, it's far more important how you do it than what you do. Yeah.
Right. Which brings us to your message to the academia now, to the professors teaching the young generation. What is your message to them?
The scientists?
Scientists, professors, researchers, whatever their task.
Change your mind. Change your mind. Metanoite. That's what John the Baptist said, change your mind. It's Greek, metanoite. Not only
Metanoite.
change your mind, but think it in the opposite way. Think things turn inside out. Last time in my course, there was I asked God, what was important for you the last day? What did you like? And then girl made a gesture, and she said, "Yeah, I felt like turned inside out. I now I look at my patients in a different way." And so, and you did that because you draw my attention. You made me aware of that behind that person that's on my table, there's a biography. There's a person. There's a human being trying to create, actually a universe. And so more believe in the potencies and the powers, not the powers, but the potencies of the human being. We can do it. We can spiritualize this world. We can make this world human by spiritualizing the animals in us and the plant life in us. The spirit can be more powerful than the matter of your body, but don't do it in the aggressive way. Do it in the inviting, the soft way to do. And they see that, they recognize that.
And the parents, what is your message? What would your message to the parents?
Your children do not come from you, they come through you. You do not possess your children. It's a tragedy that nowadays we come so strongly as a society to the option that we have our children, that we make them, that we are responsible for them, and that we possess them. And that's a fatal error. Your children, and I show that in my lectures about conception, human conception is about three. And it has to do with the fact that our children come through us, not from us. So this new egoism, this new egoism of having children and filling the children with your thoughts, read the words of Khalil Gibran, and that's what I have to the parents. Don't be afraid, and don't think that the child will fail because of you. Children will not fail if they are given room and the possibilities to do. Let them go, and don't be so responsible for will they go the right path, or will they get the right school, or will they be in time for this. And stop controlling. Stop with controlling, but be aware. Be there in the evening when your child comes home in tears because your loved one has said goodbye to you. Be there then. Be there when the child has questions, and don't give the child answers to questions that they do not ask for. And that's the tragedy of today. We try to fill our children with all kind of ideas, whatever. They are not asking for that. Listen to what the children are asking from you. There's a new parenthood coming on, an egoistic parenthood of children, of parents expecting everything from that one or two children that they have. Stop expecting and look at them, wondering what will come out of it, and stimulate that, and don't regulate it, don't control it.
And your message to everybody else, I mean, lay people like me, like your neighbor, the person in the street, what would your message be?
Well, look around, look everywhere around, in science, in society, and discover that it's all about two. There is always two. There's always polarity. Take what I call a lemniscatoscope and look for, not for the differences, but what the differences unite. Polarities are twofold, but also oneness. So look for polarity and realize that everything in this reality is twofold. Always you can find the polarity of it. There's mind and body. And like men and women, don't try to become equal. We are not equal. No one is equal to someone else. We are different. We should be different. That's our power. We are a diversity. So look for the differences and recognize in each other the opposite. If men and women would be aware of the fact that we are polarity, then we would no longer look for, oh, he's going faster, he's going slower, he's more or less. It's not about more and less. It's not about a better and whatever. It's about, polarity is not about good and bad. It's about being different. And together you can create a fruitful middle. It's about the in-between. It's about the middle dimension. There's something you can come up. That's what men and women are made for. Not to fight, not to become equal. Of course, we have equal rights. That's okay, of course. But to polarize with each other so that like a sperm and an egg can create together something that is new, that is neither sperm nor egg, and at the same time it's sperm and egg, but it's something new. So mankind, human beings, men and women always can create, what I call elevations, that you come on a higher level, that you come on the androgen level, which is as well female, as well male, neither female nor male. That's the future, creating spirit, creating the middle, creating a new world between spirit and matter. That's what we're here for.
Right.
That's how my brother
Great.
always, this is how my brother always ends his sermon.
Is there anything you would like to share? Any images or whatever else you would like to share before bringing this conversation to a completion?
Love each other.
No.
No.
So, all right. So that is the last question. What would life be like without you, or without what you represent in these years?
I thought a lot about that question. Would the world be different if I was not there? Is that your question?
Yeah.
I told you that when I look at my biography, it's not that I see crossing points or moments of choice where I took a decision or what. Very often I got the feeling I was there at the right moment and got an inspiration or an impulse, and then I did this. And afterwards it came out, well, that was the right way. And I cannot imagine that if I was not there, if I would not have been there, then a lot of people would not have met that embryo in us, that reality of spirit in us. But that's the only thing I did. I awoke in people awareness of love, of spirit, of holism. Well, that only would be maybe the situation if I would not have been there. There would have less people would have met the possibility. And that's what I really consider myself the fruit of my biography, that I brought people to the light of mind or the light of spirit. Yeah, I don't think that the world will not be different. I'm convinced nowadays that the development of the human being, the development of spirit is not happening on the platform of the big wars and the big conferences. No, there it's not happening. It's happening in individual biographies of a parent, two parents struggling a lifelong with a handicapped child, a couple of men and women or man and man that a long life, they struggle to find each other truth and to stimulate. I think there in the individual biographies, their spirit is developing. and not on the spectacle of the world of Trump or whatever. It's not important. For spirit, that's all not important, I think. So I think that when I wouldn't have been there, then there would be quite a lot of biographies wouldn't have met, spirit or the light in us or the embryo in us. That's all I can say. And it's again not my credit. An episode in the Bible. Once, when he was walking along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew on the lake casting their nets, for they were fishermen. And Jesus addressed to them and said, "Come after me, and I will make you fishers of men." And again, I feel emotion now, but that's what I feel. He said to me, "You are a fisher of men." You try to fish men and bring them to mind and spirit and to Rudolf Stein and so. And that's what I felt. That's what I feel. Fishing for people to bring them to themselves or to mind and spirit.
Thank you very much, dear Jaap. Thank you for whatever you have brought to our awareness and what you continue to inspire in us. Thank you.
Yeah.